I used to say that mirrors were portals of deceit. People fear rejection, and so they fabricate themselves to reflect others by creating another version of themselves. We go through life with so many false notions of the world, a reality of illusions, and even a distorted image of ourselves, living in a dimension of cognitive dissonance, justifying the most ridiculous things in our minds. We are embedded in a physical shell we call the body, and it's so much easier to live in a fabricated illusion. Once we ease out of that strict and narrow self-centered awareness, we truly start to become who we were born to be. And so this is the dark side of enlightenment, the part that doesn't mention the entire facts of the dark night of the soul, meeting your shadow self, your fears, where the voices really do come from, who the monsters are and shadows that you're battling with. As you are shedding every layer of who you thought you were before stepping into the light within your dark. When I first came across the actual term, the dark night of the soul, I was like, yes, I've so been there. I've so done that. Glad to not be going back there again. And then I think after about maybe 20 times of being in a different form of a dark night of the soul, I had to shut my mouth. And with that example of that form of arrogance, of what I thought was the dark night of the soul back then, is completely different to what I believe it is to be today. It is shedding a layer of the ego. And when you're trying to question your own sanity, the ego has about 101 different delusional possibilities of what is known as a form of an answer. The dark night is a passage for immersion or unity in the higher consciousness before reaching that transition point where the shift in consciousness occurs. My own label for it was basically going into the depths of hell, descending into the underworld, or the archetypal journey of the wounded healer, which is probably the less dramatic way of explaining it. You would have already gone through a phase or phases as you're progressing towards high consciousness, and the higher you ascend, the dark night will suddenly appear, greeting you lovingly on that path of evolution. And here's a brief breakdown of what to expect in the dark night. Isolation. You are completely alone, being caught between questioning the old ways of life and also coming to terms with the new possibilities. Your sense of isolation, of alienation intensifies. Your outer demeanour is calm, while the turbulence and vibrational shift arising from the inner suffering is just below the surface. You feel that negativity far outweighs any sort of love or constructive actions. And so, the dark night of the soul is a process of transformation. We connect to a greater suffering beyond the self, shedding the layer of the ego, which loses power and fades, and the soul gains ascendancy in the body. And of course, everyone's journey is different, and the dark night of the soul is a very private matter. And so again, I can only provide my own personal experiences in order to basically explain it, hoping that it breaks it down in understanding what we're dealing with in that journey of darkness and descending into the darkest depths of our mind. I had started doing self-healing in regards of meditation for anxiety. This is when I heard the voices in my head. No matter where I was, I would drop down, curl myself up in a ball and rock back and forth and just whispering constantly over and over again, stop, stop. And so the voices, whose are they? It is our ego. It is our inner critique. It is us. It is our own voice that is yelling at us. We are having a conversation with our mind. And that is your shadow self. These are your fears that you're battling with. So when you go through that dark night of the soul, Know that all of the shadows and the darkness and the fears is just your mind having a war within itself. And so, how do we silence our mind? We don't. We cannot silence our inner critique. We cannot pretend as though it's not there. Otherwise, if we block it out like I did, telling it to stop until it did, it only creates that loop by going back there again until we have nothing left but to surrender. And by doing that, we need to listen to our own negative aspects of the way we view ourselves. As within, so without. And that is why, again, everything that we feel within and what our ego and self-critique is basically shouting at us, we project our thoughts and our vibration and our emotions outwards, which is then co-created in our reality. As above, so below. And even though we cannot get rid of our ego, obviously, we can certainly tame it, control it. It's accepting, it is allowing, it is acknowledging, accepting defeat as being a form of reality is surrendering, and it is you walking out as that wounded warrior. If you have had many forms of the dark night, your ego isn't as loud, your inner critique isn't as arguable. I mean, it's still there, it's always going to be there, but it's not going to shove you down like it did the very first time, but just know that the universe is on our side. It will give us a nudge, depending how lazy we get on our journey, or it'll give us a wink by providing us with synchronicities, letting us know that we are on the right path. And always remember that when you are going through the dark night, you have already been there. You know how to get through it. You know that if you don't silence your mind and listen to your heart, you're just going to basically be on a merry-go-round until you release the resistance of letting go. And just again, trusting in the universe and having faith in yourself, knowing that this 40th time of being in the dark night is taking you higher in ascension. Never ignore the emotions, always embrace it. We can never allow that aspect of our own arrogant, ignorant shadow of self believe that we've truly dealt with every single aspect of our own stagnant energy and emotions that were trapped. We are the students. We are learning. We are still humans, and life will always throw us challenges. Have fun with it. You know damn well that once you get out of it, you'll have a burden lifted, understanding exactly what it was you needed to shed, you needed to release, you needed to let go before we can actually parade and dance in that light that comes after the dark. And so always remember, you are in control.